Hi, I'm Mike Reagan, Director of Product Development and Customer Service here at Lionel Trains.
And I'm Steve Hillo, Project Manager here at Lionel.
We asked our social media audience to give us their best questions that they'd like to have answered. And so we're here today to do just that on the first episode of Ask Lionel. Our first question comes to us from Jeff Chandler and Chris Hutton. And the question is in regards to the Norfolk and Western J-Class 611 steam engine. Now that the 611's been restored, is there a big push for collectibles? And will we see a Lion Chief Plus J or J-Class locomotive in the future? Steve, you want to answer that question for him?
There is a possibility for it, but we did produce a legacy model in 2014 of the J611.
Yeah, so basically what Steve's trying to say is in order for it to be a collectible, it needs to be in short supply, which it is. So the Legacy 611J is out there. It's in the marketplace, came with the Powhatan Aero passenger cars as a set. In terms of whether we're going to make a Lion Chief Plus and a WJ, unfortunately, Jeff and Chris, I have to be honest with you, you'll have to stay tuned to the catalogs to find out when we're going to do that.
So the next question comes from Jeremy Scalzo. He's asking, how often do we remake previous release product? For example, the Polar Express train sound tender. Mike, you want to answer that one?
No. Okay. Yeah, I'll answer it. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Steve. So that's good. That's a great question. So how often do we remake products or revisit products that we've made previously? It really depends upon what the market share is dictating. You know, once the original release is pretty much no longer available in the marketplace, we'll look to reconsider. We'll look to consider making it once again. It really varies. You know, when you have locomotives that are one-off unique types like a Pennsylvania T1 or an S1, you know, something like that is probably a good 10-15 year span between production runs, just because it's so unique and really depends upon how many we made in the previous run, how many are still out there. Great question about the Polar Express train sounds tender. If you look at that tender and what it was when it was released, it was basically steam train sounds in a tender that was unique to Polar Express. So if you look at where we are today with our Lion Chief and Lion Chief Plus technology, we really are no longer in a mode where we need to produce a tender to go with a conventional locomotive that has sounds. You know, Lion Chief has Polar Express specific announcements from Tom Hanks from the movie. You know, there's I think 6 unique announcements in that locomotive. If you compare that technology to say a train sounds tender, it had what we call generic steam. So it was whistle, bell, and just a generic announcement. It wasn't even Polar Express specific. So in all reality, you could take whatever Polar Express tender you have currently, visit electricrailroad.com, and put a rail sounds upgrade in there that'll give you whistle, bell, chuff, and announcements. It's not going to be Polar Express specific, but it's going to achieve the same thing. You can basically upgrade what you currently have to bring it up to speed with what a Polar Express train sounds tender would have been. Our next question comes from Charles Van Huel, which is why don't the majority of Americans appreciate what the railroads do for them daily? Yeah, that's a great question, Charles. I would have to say it's most likely because everybody is so busy in their day-to-day lives that they're either staring at their iPhone, their Android, or their computer screen. When they get out of work, they got to take the kids to soccer and baseball and football and all the other practices, and by the time they get home, they don't even have time to watch TV. It's to bed, get up, and get started the next day. About the only time Americans recognize that there's even a railroad is when it holds them up in traffic. It's an unfortunate state of affairs, but that's kind of where we are here in 2016. Also would help a lot if most Americans actually saw a train throughout the day, but you know, people live in the suburbs for a reason. There's no trains there. So you live in a urban area, there's a lot of trains. You live in the country, chances are you'll see trains. You live in the suburbs, chances are you'll see your neighbor doing inappropriate things in the backyard.
Our next question comes from Paul Yelk, and he has a Schnabel car. And his question is, what is the appropriate locomotive to pull the Schnabel car with?
So Schnabel car is basically, for those of you that don't know, Schnabel car is a very specialized piece of equipment that carries very large transformers or something that wouldn't fit on a traditional flat car or an over-the-road truck. It's really basically heavy hauling for the railroads. So really, those types of cars are typically put on what they call extras or specials, which are trains that are not on the regular schedule. Just because of the size, they have to limit what trains pass it. They don't want to put it on a passing siding, etc. It needs a straight right of way to wherever its destination is or next yard, etc. So basically any locomotive at all would be right at home. But since Lionel doesn't actually make a Schnabel car, I think the correct, politically correct, corporately correct answer would be any Lionel locomotive you choose would be the perfect fit for that Schnabel car.
Our next question comes from Richard Schott, and his question is, why do we make O-gauge 3 rails? Mike.
Well, let me tell you why, Steve. A couple reasons. Number one, back in the day, which would be not today and not yesterday, but back in the day, say the 1900s, 1920s, 30s, we make 3 rails for a couple of reasons. Number one, when it comes to wiring a reverse loop, when you've got 2 rails, you have a problem. If you look here at this diagram, you've got a blue rail and you got a black rail. So when you make a reverse loop, what you see is the blue rail comes around, it creates a short circuit with the black rail, and the black rail comes around and shorts out on the blue rail. With 3 rail track, your center rail is always in. Do you want to guess?
The answer is the center.
Your center rail is always in the. You want to guess?
In the center.
In the center, good. So the center rail is always in the center. So center rail is AC hot, and the 2 outside rails are ground. So as you look at this diagram, AC ground always goes back to an AC ground rail, and the AC hot always stays in the center. So number one, wiring up reverse loops is really, really simple. The other reason we use 3 rails is because we have things like animated cars, things that use power from the center rail, and they use, operating uncoupling track, so 5 rails for slide shoes. We're also able to use, by using AC, we're also able to generate 2 types of offsets, and we call them DC offsets. It's basically a phase shift to either the positive side or the zero. I mean, what Lionel train guy isn't a Tim Taylor at heart? More is definitely better.
Are you done yet?
No, I'm not. I can go on for a couple more hours. So our next question comes from Stephen Foster. And Stephen is 56 years old, and his father's father gave him a train. And he wants us to guess what train it was. And so, to be honest with you, our response looks a little bit like this. Now, Stephen, I'd like to answer your question. I have 2 answers. The answer that Steve really wants to give you is, let me guess, it's black, and it has wheels, and it pulls a coal car behind it, and it has a number on the cab, and it has a smokestack, steam dome, sand dome, drivers, main rod, eccentric crank, steam chest, pilot, drawbar, and a coupler on the tender. Unfortunately, that's not the right answer. I'm going to guess the train you have is standard gauge, and it's probably something like a 242 or an 040 9E electric standard gauge locomotive. But if that's not right, we're going to go back to this response.
I say it's a Scout set.
I'd say you're wrong.
Scout set.
With a black engine, with wheels.
Smoke.
No smoke.
Oh, this is.
It's his father's, and he's 56. We don't have smoke units there.
Okay. No smoke. Scout set.
Wrong. Steve, you know what?
Don't touch it.
You're still wrong.
And this concludes this episode of Ask Lionel.
Thanks for watching us, and if you have any questions or would like to have your question on these video series, please make sure you leave your questions in the comment section below, either on the YouTube channel or out on Facebook. And we'll see you next time on Ask Lionel.
Thanks for watching.